Okay, we are now live for this hangout for pair programming on this small show about feature flag on local support
That's
project.
Right. Cool. Yeah, and so we were just talking first about the operation of Hangouts and so on. And so, yeah, that basically, you know, it's while we both stay in it and for maybe like 5 minutes afterwards, but certainly you can, now the interesting thing actually, you've started the recording. So you now have control over what goes into the recording. And so if you click on the squares, for example, of like my square at the bottom or your own square, you can control what's being recorded. There's a little white box that appears around that, and then you can click them again to allow it to switch back to the audio control where whoever's speaking will be the center of attention. If you drop out, the recording will continue for about 5 minutes or so and then just automatically end. If you come back in, you can maintain it, and actually I think it can carry on recording for about 8 or 9 hours in principle. not that we need that amount of time. Yes, and so, but yeah, if we both leave the Hangout, I'm not sure how long, but after some periods, maybe 5-10 minutes or maybe a little bit longer, basically the Hangout will then become garbage collected, I guess. It will be kind of thrown away, and then even though the link's still there, no one will be able to get back in. It will be kind of terminated or what have you. So that's that there. If you're interested, I was just going to give you, are you interested in some feedback about the interaction in the Slack?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, I was just going to say, the points that you summarized in the Slack are excellent. You were asking, you know, the couple of things that you wanted to understand about up and down methods and, you know, feature find destroy and so on. What I would say in general is I'd recommend getting that kind of summary into the Slack chat early, in as much as, you know, the Hangout is kind of like a big vehicle. It's kind of a heavyweight thing. I mean, they're great sometimes, you know, for boiling down and looking at the actual code. They're absolutely fantastic. But in terms of, you know, maximizing the chance of you getting feedback to help you resolve your issue quickly, that a little summary like you just did there in Slack, I'd always kind of do that first, and then you never know, you know, somebody, and also not just me, but somebody else in the project might be able to come and give you some help with that. Anyway, that's just a thought to consider when you're thinking about setting up a Hangout versus, you know, excuse me, going for you know, a little Slack description. Although it's great to see you set up and able to run the Hangouts. So yeah, okay, if that makes sense.
Yes.
Cool. So yeah, should we? I mean, now these are, you know, they're wonderful points. Should we just? Do you want to kind of bring up some code and we'll look at these things in that context?
Yeah, I'll share my screen now. So going back to here, code. Things like on the latest migration about search input bar on org pages.
Yes.
First question is, what are these for? Are they, you know, like call using up and down to create and then find by? That's the first question. And go back to implementing this here. Can we do find and destroy? So as
both very reasonable questions.
Yeah, on our what is that? Yeah, those are the basic two questions. Yeah.
So well, I think I could easily, well, easily or not, but I could try and to just answer those questions by trying to give you an explanation. But I wonder, let's say we start with the up and down things. How would you? Let's say that I wasn't available. How would you find out what those up and down meant?
Yeah, well, I'll look at how where you know, for example, where they are used along with you know, up and down, and see what their functionality is.
And so what do you? I mean, I guess you have do you have a guess in your mind about what the functionality is based on from what you can see?
Yeah. So how what I understand is by uh, using up, you are able to start the feature, create the feature, and
Mm-hmm.
using down, you take it away. So just like we have
Mm-hmm.
talked before, that
Mm-hmm.
in case we don't want to push any feature in production, we can switch it off.
Mm. Mm. Yes. And so, well, that's what you've described there is sort of an assessment of what up and down are doing in this specific case. And then there's also the question of what up and down do generally in the
Yeah,
context of a migration. And so
yeah,
I guess, are you saying that you're unsure of what they do generally?
yes.
Right, right. And so can you think of any ways in which you might get more information about to find out what they do generally?
Not straight away.
No, okay, no, that's fair enough. So there's, I think the thing, there's a wonderful resource which you may or may not be aware of. I want to draw your attention to. I guess I will just share my screen so you can see my process on this side over here. Give me a second. There's the Slack where we were originally discussing. I'm just going to bring in a browser here. Sorry, just sorting my screens out. Yeah, so if I go in here, so there's a thing called the Rails guides. I don't know if you've seen this
Yeah,
before. They're really
yeah.
quite good. And so, for example, in this current context, we're looking at migrations. So there's the Rail guide on active record migrations.
Yeah.
Which I don't know. Have you read this before?
Yeah, I've been through it. Yeah, during the maker's time. Yeah.
During the course. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. And but so have you read it again recently?
No.
Yeah. So I think that well, it's an interesting question here. Is, I mean, if we maybe we'll look at it together here now. So migration overview. Migration is a convenient way to alter your database schema over time in a consistent and easy way. They use a Ruby DSL. Do you know what a DSL is?
Is data? No, I'm sorry. I'm guessing.
No problem. Well, it's domain-specific language.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
And so that's quite. I don't suppose. Do you know? And there we go. Do you know any examples of other kinds of domain? I think you do know some other domain-specific languages. Do you know any of them? Do you know what they are? You've learned one at Makers. There's another domain-specific language you learned at Makers. Another Ruby domain-specific language, that is. So a domain-specific language is kind of
like HTML and all those. Yeah.
Well,
No.
HTML is a markup language.
GPL, I think. Yeah.
Yeah. A domain-specific language is, I mean, I guess it's saying here like HTML for web pages, but it's kind of in the context of well, it's funny because I wouldn't have said that. I guess it is actually when we are. I mean, when I'm thinking about domain-specific languages, I'm usually thinking about programming languages or kind of libraries that are built on programming languages. So that I think the thing that you've learned as a big thing at Makers is RSpec.
Like, yeah.
So
Okay.
RSpec is a domain so RSpec is built on top of Ruby to allow you to describe tests. So the migration thing in Rails is a thing that's written in Ruby to allow us to describe migrations, so that we don't have to write SQL. Yes, you know what, and you know SQL.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So it says we can think of each migration as being a new version of the database.
Yeah.
A schema starts off with nothing in it, and each migration modifies it to add or remove tables, columns, or entries. There we go. So we've got an example of a migration here. So we've got one here with change, and it's creating a table, and it says this migration. Actually, well, can if you just don't. I mean, you can obviously read this if you want to, but if you look at this example migration, what can you what would you guess that this does?
Yes, it's creating a table called products.
Mm-hmm.
It's got these two columns in it, name and description, and type. And the third column is like timestamp. And
yeah. And so then absolutely. So this actually happens to add two columns that's special to active record and so on. And it's sort of so exactly that's that, you know, we can see what it's doing, and it's based upon having some class that what's this what does it mean, what does it mean when we have this symbol and then active record?
That's the active record library for handling Postgres.
SQL. Yes,
the migration.
What does this mean here? This
inherit the active record migration into
exactly, yes. So create products is a subclass of active record migration, and we implement this method change, which is going to be run when we run the migration. So it says note that we define the change that we want to happen moving forward in time. Before this migration is run, there will be no table. After the table will exist, and active record knows how to reverse this migration as well. If we roll the migration back, it will remove the table. Yeah. So what do you? So in this context, how? I mean, I guess you've seen the change method before. What do you think the change method does generally in the context of a migration?
A change is going to change the table.
In this case, yes, it's going to create a table from nothing. But so I think in the broader context, what it's doing is it's changing the database schema. Well, when I say database schema, what does that mean to you, if anything?
The schema means, you know, all complete structure of the database, like it will have tables, it will have indexes, and it will have, you know, maybe some procedures, stored procedure or something like that.
That's the whole thing. So this change, we're changing the schema of the database to add a table. Yeah, in this case. So then we go, there's some other bits and pieces, and it says here then, alternatively, you can use up and down instead of change. So we've got an example here where, so like if we have a look at this example, what would you say is happening in this example?
I think what I understand is trying to the up method is changing table products and adding the price, and down is doing. Is down going to take away that? Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, well, I think that's close. I think what it's doing here is that rather than I mean, you can add and remove columns. I think in this case, what it's doing is it's changing the type of the column. So this one here is saying, let's make a change to the price column so that it has a type string. And then this one is saying, let's change the price column so that it has a type integer. So does that, so
what's the up and down then?
Well, that's interesting. So the up and down is an alternative to change. Like, I guess this comes down to then, like, you know, what are migrations? And I kind of almost want to draw on a whiteboard here. And I guess what I'm going to try and just quickly do is go to, I've got a drive there, haven't I? Let's just create a new, is it the drawing? Let's just grab a drawing. But so we kind of have the, is that your mobile phone that's beeping there? I want kind of like a little, what do I want to draw here? I want to see, I feel like I want to have like a little table that has, still no, I want to draw a box. I think let's have a box. Yeah, so we've kind of, oh, well, I know what I want. Let's have a little database. This is a database. So basically we've got, you know, this is often the symbol for the database. And then within the database, we can imagine, we've got some tables. And let me put in there. So this might be, I don't know, products. and we might have as well, we might have customers. And we just imagine here, I'll put the column names in the thing. So it's like ID, name, email, and then we've got the products have got, let's say, an ID and a name and a price, let's say. Yeah. And so we've got the database as it stands in, I wanted to get those other things as well tonight. We've got the database kind of as it stands at one point in time. So this is like, we might describe this as, there we go, that this, if we go to the text box, that this is before the migration. And this here is after the migration. And so let's say that, I mean, I guess I'm just tempted to expand this so that we can have, if we take from that example, we can have included here let's just put in something which indicates. So if let's say that the name is a string and the price is an integer, like so. There you go. That's our database, and the ID is an integer as well. Yeah, that's the kind of thing. Have you used SQL outside of Makers?
Yeah.
Right. So you're familiar with that. That's anyway. We'll just leave it like that. But you can imagine customers the same thing. So we've got before migration, the after migration. So there's basically a process. What the migration is doing is describing how we're going to change the schema from before to after. So we can either implement a method. So we have, like the change method.
Yeah.
Which says, we're going to switch the price actually to here. Let's say that we want the price to be a string, let's say. And so we've got this operation which says turn the price from an int to a string, like so. Yeah, and that's that's one way of specifying this change. Now, the thing that Rails allows us to do is basically to go backwards and forwards between, you can roll the migration forwards and backwards. So if you specify, in your migration def change, and basically Rails is clever enough to know that if you, say in the change that you want to change the int to a string, it knows that if you want to go backwards, then you do the opposite thing.
Okay.
Yeah. So if we got here. So if we've got that kind of just in terms of a change, let's have they've got here. Yeah, I think in this case, like maybe this is something that it doesn't know how to do. So we've got an example here. You can do change, and then we can say, right, this is how you move forwards and backwards. Like when we use change here with the table, Active Record kind of knows, okay, if the change of moving forwards was creating the table, then moving backwards, I just delete the table. Yeah. Does that make sense? And then so maybe there are other things, like I guess actually what it's saying here is if you wanted to, for example, change the column type from one thing to another, then it may not know, because you can imagine if you had I think that's the issue here. If you had this change, if you have this change and it's actually the way it does it with the price, what does it do there? Wrong window. I always jumping backwards and forwards to the wrong place. Basically, yeah, you do like this change, and you basically be saying t change price string like that. So you're just saying we want it to go from an integer to a string. But if you think about it, the information that it's got here only tells us to make it into a string, and it doesn't record what the column type was previously. So in that case, it's saying you got two things. One is you can still use the change method, but you go in and you specify, both the forward and the backward, or as they call them, the up and the down. So I mean, in this drawing, I've got these things so that they're sort of side by side, but we can sort of think of this step here as being, can I add text to that? I want the arrowhead to be bigger. Go on, bigger arrowhead. Come on. How do we get a bigger arrowhead? I don't know. It's a very small arrowhead. It doesn't matter. Anyway. Let's do here. We can call this direction up. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then we can it follows. Still arrow there. That this direction here. I mean, I often end up calling them forwards and backwards, but the actual method names that they use are
Up and down.
Up and down. So then going back over here. Yeah. So then in this case, so it's showing we've got options. We can kind of use this syntax to say this is the way the change operates, both up and down or forwards and backwards. Or we could do, I think this is actually the older syntax. Like when I first started programming with Rails some like 8-9 years ago, they didn't have this change method. They only had up and down.
Okay.
But basically the up and the down allow us to kind of properly, completely describe the process of changing the database from one state to another and then back again. So if we go back to your code, the code that you were looking at, do you want to go to your? So if we look at this here, and we think about what the up and the down mean, how do they?
Yeah, create the feature and then take it away.
Right. And what I'll do is, and so that's what it does in this specific case. But so in general, an up and a down method in a migration represent what? Can you put it in your own words? How would you describe?
Yeah, up you're kind of making a change, changing some property in a database, and then down is going back to how it was. So
exactly.
Roll back in a way.
Yeah, it is indeed exactly rollback. And in fact, the phrase that you would use from the command line to move it is called rake db rollback.
Rollback, yeah.
Or is it rake db migrate rollback? And anyway, but yes, I mean, if we look at, I've got. If you just look at my screen, I guess you've only got one monitor at home. I do recommend having multiple monitors so you can see all the different things going on. But if you do rake, is it -t db like this? You can see a list of the all the different things. So you can see here. There's the rake db rollback. Command. So yeah, exactly. We can see it as a rollback. So going back to your code again. Now, I'll just, I just want to kind of debug one thing that you were saying. Is so we were talking about this. I think you now feel at least you've expressed what these things are doing generally. But you were saying that moving, the process of creating the feature here and destroying it corresponded to making the thing available in production or not. And that's not quite true, because there's two things that have to happen before these features actually get, active. Right. There's creating them, which just puts them in the database, and they're created by default as inactive, as the activity is set to false. And we have to activate them before they'll actually, have any effect on the production system, if that makes any sense.
Yeah. Create in the database, and then there's another method which is active too.
That's right. So the create makes the feature available to be used, but initially in the inactive state. Yes. So hopefully that answers the first question about up down, and then you had another question relating to find, by, and destroy, or
why do we use delete?
Well, that's
and not destroy, like how it is shown, how it is done.
Well, that's an interesting thing. Now, see, that code there was written by Zhongmin, and based on my general thing of saying, pop that in there. I mean, the interesting thing here is that maybe that migration could be written as a change operation. And I would have thought that we could just. Well, I mean, actually, see here, this is the kind of thing, like, I mean, I don't remember everything about Rails all the time. And so you know, what I wrote when I was just doing it in our mob programming earlier on today, I just kind of wrote, you know, the first thing that came into my head. But so if we go, from the console, let's just play with this. So we could do Rails console, and oh yeah, I'll just play in the development environment. But so we can, I mean, and you're familiar with the Rails console, right? Yeah. So here I can just have a little check. What are our features here? And I could then, you know, create a feature. Let's create something that has name. Let's call it Raj test. There we go. So we've got a Raj test feature like that. So we've got that present now. We do feature all. That's in there. But so we could try now. Let's say if we do feature delete name Raj test. Oh, what about I've done it with a symbol, right? Now that doesn't work. Yeah, and I wonder if that's, see, this is just me playing with the syntax. Let's have a look. Let's see, can we do it like this? And I then even wonder, can I do destroy? I can't. And I guess it may be that I have to specify the ID. Let's have a look. Bum, 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 bum. The ID was, it created one and it was ID 5. I can probably, so I can do it by that. So that's kind of like, I guess I was there thinking, oh yes, I would imagine Rails can just take a hash rather than ID and do destroy on something, but maybe it couldn't. But so then I will like kind of go, oh yeah, Rails active record destroy, and just think, oh, that's the kind of thing. And that's the, you know, having not been able to, and maybe we're on a slightly older version, so we've got destroy, method deprecated or moved. Interesting. Okay. So is it actually, it should be delete that we're using now. So it looks like destroy is kind of an older thing, although still.
I think destroy.
Let's have a look. Delete. Both of them. So what's the interesting? What's the, you know, Rails delete versus destroy? What's the, okay. So we've got destroy runs any callbacks while delete doesn't. So we should probably use destroy. But that's, I'm slightly surprised there, because maybe this API doc is just being weird. But it says method, or maybe it's just, it's in a different place than it used to be. Oh, it's probably gone for, it's maybe moved from base to, here we go. That's, there we go. It's just in a, so the method is still there. It's just been, you know, where it sits in the Rails. So and we can see destroy takes an ID. So it has to be an ID there. And we could just have a look at about delete takes an ID or an array. Okay. Yes. Okay. So I mean, I think there's, So that suggests that that if we can, so I guess we could just do run the test again. So if we create a new one, so what we would need, obviously we need the ID, but I guess so the find by name. And there's different ways to do it. They're like, we could just do it find. We just do find and then do name Raj test like that, and then just do destroy. And that says no, because it's looking for
no ID, I think.
No, what have I done wrong there? So we've got feature all. Did I not create it? We've got created it. Oh no, I created it with a string this time for some reason. Couldn't find feature with ID. But so what was the one that Jongmin had there? Did he have delete rather than destroy? Or did he have find by name?
He had delete. Yeah, there. No.
Seems I can certainly. Anyway, yes. So if I find the thing, I can then call destroy directly on it. Yeah. So that certainly works. The interesting question to then potentially ask is, we'll go back to migration. Where are the migrations? migrations. Here they are. Yeah. So it's interesting that we've got that operation there. It makes me wonder, though, could we have instead, could we have just this? Do we need to have that down method at all? You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
And so what then the interesting question here is, if we thought we could change that like that, how would we test it? And so what I could just do here is I could quickly get the feature find by. It's funny, I have a feeling like the find by name like that. I thought that was deprecated, but anyway. Oh yeah, these the find by name. Oh, I think it was all right. I was doing find. Yeah, so there's a difference between find and find by.
Find by.
That's the thing. Yeah, find by name, like doing this, that's been deprecated. With just find, you need to give it the ID. With find by, then we can do name.
Yeah, what column? Yeah.
Yeah. So if I take it, what I'm going to do here is on my local development thing, I'm going to destroy. Actually, what I'll do first is we'll take this. I won't do anything from here. Control A, kill. What I'll do here is I've finished in that branch when I check out develop. Yeah. And what I'll do is I'll do a rollback. So rake db rollback. So that should use the existing code, and it should delete. There we go. It's deleted this thing. So we can just have maybe a look in here, and we'll just go in Rails console in there. And I think by default it will do it on the development environment. And so now if we do feature all here, we can see it doesn't have that anymore. So what we could do there is we could just quickly do that, and we could see, right, we'll actually, because this is less code, right? That's nicer and cleaner. So what we could do there is we could try now rake db migrate. And of course we have to spell it correctly, otherwise it just doesn't work. Rake db migrate. There we go. So that's gone forward.
Yeah, that's gone. That's in.
And we can see that it's created it there. And the interesting thing now is, can we do a rollback? Thinking about it. We've done it. And oh, interesting. Now the interesting thing there is. Oh, hold on. Just so what's happened is it hasn't deleted it, even though we rolled back. So that's interesting. That confirms for me that we absolutely do need to have the down operation, because it seems that as clever as active record migrations are, they don't know how to reverse create operation. So does that make sense?
Yeah, that's what I was wondering. Like the rollback is not going to. Is it going to just put the database back to a stage?
Well, it's supposed
to.
The
last.
Yes.
Last change.
Absolutely, right. And you'll notice, I don't know if you followed, I remember they did that a bit fast, but when we had this explicit up and down, then
it will do,
it worked. But now this change thing is a little bit dangerous, because some things it will understand how to roll them back. But in this case, where it didn't understand how to roll it back, it didn't give me an error. It said, yeah, I'm doing it. Yeah, I'm back, gone now.
Right.
But it didn't throw any kind of error. And actually, as we check here, and we'll relog
it's not there.
No, it is still
there. Sorry,
it's still there. It hasn't been deleted.
So that's the purpose then. Okay.
Well, when you say that's the purpose, so can you elaborate?
Yeah, I mean, by doing up and down, telling exactly what you want to roll back, use down to roll back to what was done up, like what was changed.
Exactly.
But going back to the Google search which you did, where there was a change.
You mean
on this example where there's here.
Yep.
If you go below.
Now this one. I think what you ask is how does this change work? The active record migration is clever enough. It knows that if it has a change that's a create table, then it knows to destroy the table.
But if there is a feature,
Well, or
Oh, there's some column change. It may not
well,
know,
that's
is it?
it depends. So there's certain things like I think we've got this thing using the change method. So
Oh,
so the change method is the primary way of writing migrations. It works for the majority of cases where active record, this is the critical thing, knows how to reverse the migration automatically. Currently, the change method supports only these migration definitions. So if you're doing any of these, then it will be able to reverse them.
Reverse them. But because we are calling that feature
Yes.
dot method, so
Yes.
it's not part of these standard active record.
That's right. This is, if you're going to need to use any other methods, you should use reversible or write the up and down methods. Yeah.
Very good. Yeah. So use up change when you're doing a standard.
Yeah. Whenever if at the moment current version of Rails, it can handle any of these. I mean, the interesting thing here is that we're maybe abusing the system a little bit, in as much as the migration is intended to be for a change to the database schema. But this is not changing the database schema. It's kind of just inserting some kind of standard data into the database. I mean, there's an argument, that says maybe this should be in kind of configuration. I mean, it's peculiar to the way that we happen to have implemented features.
For example, when we want to create some, for the development or even testing, we want to create some basic set of data, like putting few rows, few columns necessary for testing in our database. So where will those instructions go?
Well, in general, that will go in the seeds. This is the seed. This is specifically to allow us to do that. The thing is, if we were imagining that we were now, say that you're working on another feature and you're adding the Raj test feature, so one thing that we could do, and this would work fine for for other developers getting set up, is we could just add that here, and then we could activate that, and that would be fine. All of our, all of the different developers working with the code base would, pull out the thing. They could, particularly if they're starting from scratch, they'll be fine. But the problem is, in some ways, is that people who have already got set up don't necessarily want to run the entire seed thing again. They maybe only want to run this bit. So maybe then, it's kind of like, should we put that somewhere else? I mean, individual developers can, in principle, run this, from the command line. Although it's kind of a bit messy. This two-step thing of kind of creating it with a particular name and then activating it. But at least by having it in here in particular, I mean, if we look at it in the context of when we added the volunteer ops, and so on this one I haven't got in, but if we haven't done it, volunteer ops create or whatever it was, you can see how it sort of makes sense to deliver it's here as, the migration runs and then the feature is in place. You can sort of see how that makes, and then of course what we would notice is actually we would now really have to, although it knows that this bit knows how to reverse this bit, it's not going to know how to reverse this bit. So actually maybe this should be changed to be up and down in order to work properly with that, or some other thing. I mean, the whole thing here makes me a little bit suspicious of the way we have implemented features. And since we were talking about that this morning, I went ahead and in the pivotal tracker, I created a new ticket about about, find it. What did I call it? Migrations. Yeah. No, feature. Also, we're talking about feature flags. Feature flags. Put flag in there. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So I've added a chore, which is investigate whether we should be using a different approach to feature flags. So I've got links to some of these other ones here about other. And what's interesting is other people are using kind of configurations, but that's, I don't know, you know, if you've got like as a kind of configuration, then that seems like you have to redeploy. You know, you have to make a change in the file to you know, like turn your feature on and off. Whereas for us, we have them in the database. It means we can turn them on and off without redeploying the code. So I think there's some advantage to the way that we're doing it. But you know, this is the interesting thing I think about working in this domain is there's like, you know, people are evolving new ways of doing things all the time.
What's the other way? Sorry, what's the other way? Like we have all the features listed in our table, and which we can by default they're all false, and when we want to activate, we can activate.
Yes.
What's the other way you said?
Well, another way that seems to be described there is to kind of have it in a config. So you see we've got like also this config directory here. And then you can see we've got like our like we've got, for example, this is our new relic. It's a logging system. It has its config, and we can sort of, you know, we can turn things on and off in here for our monitoring. But in order for this to, you know, if we want to change to be deployed, then we have to, you know, do a pull request or, you know, like, and then get that approved and then get that pushed through the pipeline. I mean, I guess it's interesting there. I mean, of course, I'm now, you know, please tell me to stop talking if it's getting tedious. But the interesting thing here is that, I mean, in my mind, you know, from my history of development, you know, making a change to the database is slightly easier than doing a deployment. But with Heroku and Git and so on, you know, and many big companies like Facebook, where they're deploying hundreds of times a day new code, and you know, it's not generating significant downtime. So maybe there's a trend towards it should be a configuration thing rather than a database thing. And I'm kind of, you know, I was quite happy for it to go into the database. I didn't build the feature system that we have. I worked, I mean, you know, that was, but so maybe it's slightly an older fashioned style way of doing it. But you know, that one could do research amongst all the different companies and kind of say, how are you doing your feature flags? And I mean, that would be, you know, an interesting thing to do, and you could do a blog post on it. And I mean, that's what I sort of, it would be nice to find, you know, someone who's already done that. So if you do feature flags, blog post, and okay, interesting there. So we've got someone here saying feature toggles are one of the worst kinds of technical debt. And there's, you know, problems and advantages and problems. I mean, you know, this person might, I mean, this is the kind of thing one should be doing. And so we've got, I'll put in here related. And what I'll do is I'll stick that in that activity because otherwise it just posts weird things. But so let's have a look. Feature toggles, feature flag driven development, feature flags, toggles and code, better development with feature flags there. So it's kind of, you know, it would be good to read, you know, all of these about feature flags. And, you know, it may be that, you know, people are kind of coming up with better approaches than feature flags or what have you. It's, you know, the whole, you know, like, did I talk to you at all about the cathedral and the bazaar? Have you heard of that? I was talking. I think I did. I mentioned it. Yeah, you remember. Yeah, I mean this. Or get that one as well. There we go. But yeah, so the we talked before about the cathedral and the bazaar, and which is this, you know, is it Eric Raymond? Yeah, is that, you know, rather than it being somebody like Microsoft saying, yes, this is the way that feature flags are done and whatever, there's kind of, you know, there's people that there are people like, you know, Martin Fowler who, you know, obviously if you do this search for feature flags, even his thing comes out at the top, and that's from 2010 and from one of his books. And, you know, so that there are kind of there are people who are famous influencers who suggest about it, but then other people kind of, you know, create their own ideas and their own, you know, blog about it and say, oh, you know, this guy's saying, oh, there's a problem here, and it's this big kind of like emerging stew of ideas. if you know what I mean. And over time, you know, as people try out different approaches, one gradually starts to see, oh, this one's working well for us, but not for them, and so on. So yeah, I'd strongly encourage you to read these blogs and you know, investigate more yourself.
Yes.
Yeah. Cool. Okay. So have we? I'm sure I've probably gone on talking for far too long. Have we
Yeah.
answered all the questions?
Yeah. So yeah, I get the point now. So I will have a read, and I'll suggest if we really need to do, you know, change from up and down, you know, where changes there, change to up and down, to just make you know, that code consistent, so all over we are using similar way.
Yeah, consistent, and that's the, you know, the most important thing is whatever we decide, we want to have that done consistently. You know, there's that sounds excellent. Yeah, good.
So you know, we know, because wherever the feature is concerned, so if the migration is creating a table and it needs to add a feature to feature table, then we have to think of destroying it also. Like, so when rollback happens, that feature goes away. So I will have a look at all those. Well, mainly at the moment we have 3 migrations where they might need a change.
Yes.
And I'll first have, just, you know, for my knowledge, have read at those blogs to really understand where things are going these days, and what other people are talking about, so I can, you know, I have confidence about what we can do.
Yeah, I mean, I would say, yeah, so there's sort of 2 things, there's 2 tasks there. One is just sorting it out as we're currently, the direction we're currently going in. And what I would say is I would try and maybe get a pull request, do something that's consistent, and get a pull request in, so that we can actually start a discussion with the rest of the community. And then having done the pull request, because that's like, as a work in progress, right? It's just out there. And it means that we can everybody can kind of join in, is then maybe go and read the blogs, or, well, up to you. I mean, don't feel like,
I get the point.
Don't feel like you have to like absorb all the knowledge and do a perfect thing. Remember, the perfect is the enemy of done. So just we kind of, you know, get something out there, and then we can also go, you know, in the pull request to start the discussion, and then, you know, we can go off and research it separately as well, or that kind of thing. So I'll just add a link in here. That was the link to we've got this what's it called, the chore started here, and I'll just add the link there for the I'll add the link for that, and also I'll put the link for this one as well. This one, let's make sure I can share. This is migrations and advanced change. Anyone can comment. Save. There we go. Let's done. Okay. Yeah. Diagram. Just in case you want to refer back to that. Probably unnecessary now. But there we go. Yeah. Cool. All right. Yeah. All right. Well, I'll maybe see you at the stand-up.
Yeah. I got a couple of other questions not related to this, regarding license and some errors I'm getting. So we can talk about it later.
Yeah. Okay. Right.
Yeah.
Sure. No problem. Yeah. Or feel free, as I said before, you can just put them into the Slack.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Sorry.
And then, you know, potentially I can help you, or
anybody else.
Well.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Good stuff, Raj. All right.
Okay.
Thanks. Oh, well, by the way, can you? So another thing I'll just mention, so you're doing the recording, so you can obviously stop the recording in a minute. Do you want to just? There should be like a. Oh, actually, no. Come to think of it, I've got the link already in the Slack, haven't I? I was just going to share. Because I think this is a good explanation.
Up and down, Rails migrations,
and I might just post that to some people. But I think I've got the link from the fact that you started it there.
Because there is a button here where you can notify on Slack. So I've done that. So
and that happens automatically. You don't even have to press that. It happens automatically. But yeah, no, we're all good. Okay, nice one, Raj. I'll see you in a bit.
Okay, then. See you in a bit.
All right, bye for now.
Cheers. Bye-bye.